Hey folks, it's Jeremy, the host of Blammo. Thanks so much for listening. This is a preview of one of our exclusive shows on Patreon. These are member-supported shows, meaning they only happen because of our incredible members and community. So check out a preview of the episode, and if you like it, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/Blammo, where we have tons of exclusive Blammo episodes, shows, our amazing Slack group, and we're adding new things for members all the time. If not, no worries, we still love you, and we literally have hundreds of episodes of Blammo all free for you to dive into. Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Die Workwear podcast. My name is Derek Guy, and my co-host is Peter Zotello. So a couple of months ago, Nicholas Templeman visited San Francisco, and Peter and I recorded a podcast with him. As some of you may know, Nicholas is a bespoke shoemaker. He's someone that I've used for 10 years. He got his start at John Lobb, working as the last maker and for the John Lobb of St. James in London, not the John Lobb in Paris, which is mostly a ready-to-wear operation. Nicholas is one of the best craftspeople I've ever used. He's incredibly talented, has a very unique way of making lasts, and is just very dedicated to getting things right. So when he came to San Francisco, we were excited to talk to him about his career as a bespoke shoemaker, how bespoke shoes are made, and also some of his favorite things. Let's dive in.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, Peter.
How are you?
Doing really well. We have a special guest today.
We do.
It's Nicholas Templeman, who's been my main shoemaker for, a few years now, maybe 5 or 6 years. One of the best craftspeople I've ever worked with.
And
ever.
a nice guy.
Great guy. And I'm so excited to have him on the pod because he knows so much about the industry of bespoke shoemaking and has had a really kind of impressive career as an independent.
Yes. Now let's start with that. What is your background, Nicholas?
Hello. My background. I've been a shoemaker for 17 years now.
17 years?
17 years. We go back actually closer to 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So it's been 10 years since I started my own firm. 10 years this November. So my first time coming out and met you would have been 2015, March 2015.
That's right. I remember messaging you through Style Forum.
Yep.
And said, I heard you are going to be independent. Are you ever coming out to the US?
Yeah. And I think we did a chat over the phone for an interview.
Yeah.
And I planned a trip just to the East Coast. I think to Chicago as well. And I had no intention of coming this far away. It seemed like there'd be dragons kind of place on the West Coast. So
did you have any intention that you would be making split toe derbies so many times for Derek?
Sadly, I didn't. Those were the innocent days before he broke me. So did an interview with for you for the Die Workwear blog, which was good fun. And off the back of that, I had so many inquiries from San Francisco. So you had such a big readership in the Bay Area that I ended up just adding San Francisco to the trip, and it turned out to be the busiest city for me in the end, which was great, and I've got to thank you for that.
So you went to school originally for art.
Yep, I was at University for Art. I studied fine art printmaking was my specialty. So
when you graduated, why didn't you go directly into printmaking? How did you wind up becoming a shoemaker?
I had no intention of being an artist. I just wanted to study art. I like making art, like making things. I didn't really like the idea of being an artist. I didn't enjoy the critiquing of what I made. with my class and my tutors. So
you didn't realize shoemaking would throw you into Style Forum critiques?
Well, it's a different kind of thing. When I did a project and handed it in for university, I'd have to explain which childhood trauma this represented and what I was working through. And I don't like giving much of myself away, especially back then. I've always been quite reserved and I like making something for the sake of it, making something nice. I enjoyed printmaking, especially because it's all about the process. You're working with tools to make the art. You're not just painting on a canvas. So you're using presses, you're using screen printing, all these different kinds of medium for making prints. And I like the process of making, a series of 10 or 15 or 20 prints and then making sure they're all refined, well made, well printed, technically good. I enjoyed that a lot more than actually turning up with a half-baked piece, which I can then explain and waffle on, and get a round of applause from the tutors because I came to terms with something that that was troubling me. I never enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't need catharsis. I don't need therapy. I'm a middle-aged British man. We have our own therapy, and it's called alcohol.
So you come out of school and you immediately get a job at John Lobb?
Pretty much, yeah. I graduated. When I was at university, there was I've always liked shoes. I like clothes. I knew there were tailors in London. I just assumed all shoes were factory shoes. I just thought you pressed a button on a machine and a shoe popped out, and that was it. Different sizes. I had no idea that they were made by hand. And then when I was at university, I walked home past this shoe shop, and they had a display with like hand tools in there. So I looked at them for a little while on the walk home, and I was kind of mesmerized, thinking, so what do these hand tools do? What do each of them do? And I like tools, I like machines, I like all kinds of stuff for making stuff with. And then I went home and got my computer out and did some research on handmade shoes, and found out there was a whole industry in London where I was from. And I thought that could be quite interesting to learn a bit about the process, how shoes are made. Then yeah, I thought it might be like a art project for school, but no, nothing ever came of that. But when I went back home to London after graduating, I got in touch with John Lobb, who are one of the biggest, most famous handmade shoe company in the world, just to get some information, some advice, see what a shoe workshop looked like. And when I turned up, I didn't realize they were advertising for an apprentice. So I was John Hunter Lobb. He asked me for my CV. I had no idea why he was asking for my CV, because I was there just to meet and greet, kind of have a show around, get the kid out the door again. But it turned out they were looking for somebody, and that's what he thought I was there for. So I spent a few hours in there looking around in wonder, because it's an amazing place. And got my CV off to them and started my apprenticeship a few weeks later.
The British bespoke shoe industry, similar to the tailoring industry, seems to be broken into certain career paths. So, for example, if you go to Salvaro and you want to be part of the production of bespoke clothes, you can either become a cutter, who's the person who drafts and cuts the pattern. You can become a coat maker, which is actually what a tailor is, or you can be a trouser maker, which is also a type of tailor. And it seems like the bespoke shoe industry is sort of the same. You have the last maker.
Yeah.
You have the person who kind of sews the bits of things together to form a shoe. Mm-hmm. When you went in, did you just happen to fall into last making because that's what they were advertising at the time?
That's what they were looking for, last maker. So the last maker is kind of analogous to a cutter for a tailor's shop. Last makers typically work in-house. Because that's what makes the shoe unique, and what takes the fit and the look and everything. So if you have a house style, then you have your house last makers making that, and that's just what they were looking for. I had no real preference what I did. I didn't really know too much about the different roles or how much of each one you did or anything. I just wanted in the industry. And I was quite lucky it was last making, because that's what I like doing.
Am I correct in thinking that there are more, that you presumably make more money as a last maker and there's more career kind of upward opportunities? Why would someone go into this trade and choose to be like a bottom maker versus a last maker?
Well, if you're a last maker, you work in-house, so you're working in the shop typically. You can't do it remotely. So if the shop you're working for is in London, you have to live within accessible reach of London to commute in every day and work in the shop, work your shop hours 9 to 5, and see clients and make the lasts, and you're an employee, so you'll be on a salary. So you have more kind of security in a lot of ways when you get benefits like holiday and sick pay and things like that. In terms of earning potential, when you're an outworker, same as if you're a coat maker or a trouser maker, you earn as much as you can work. You have the benefit of being able to work anywhere. So a lot of people live anywhere in the country. Some even live abroad. I mean, some shops will send work to makers who live in Italy or Spain or even Japan. Some people send work to makers in Japan, and then all the rough stuff, all the last and the uppers gets put in the post and gets made and sent back to the shop in London. So tons of air miles to get the shoes made. So you have that luxury when you're an outworker, which most outworkers like the flexibility. If you want to take a day off, you haven't got to ask anybody. You get the work gets sent to you, and you decide when you do it. They can ask you to do it quickly. They can give you a deadline for it, and you can either say I can get it ready for that time, or you can say no, I can't. But if you want to take a month or a year off unpaid, then you can do that whenever you want. If you want to sleep all day and work all night, you can do that as well. It's very flexible.
So when you say they can get paid by how much they produce, do you mean they get paid by the unit?
Yeah, so like a piece rate essentially. So if each job's got each shop has a price list of each job that they want. So if you make uppers, a plain Oxford will net you X amount of money. A full brogue will be more involved. You got to make a wing cap. You got to punch all the holes out one by one. So it takes more time. So you charge more. Well, they pay you more. And if you're a maker, you get paid per pair of shoes, and then there's extras for like toe plates, slightly larger sizes, welted seats, anything that's like an extra time on the basic making a pair of shoes. Then that gets added on too. So yeah, if you want to work 18-hour days, making as many pairs of shoes a week as you can, and the shop is willing to provide that many pairs for you, then you can do that.
For listeners who are not acquainted with how bespoke shoes are made, what is the process, and who are the people that are kind of, we're alluding to someone who makes it last and someone who puts these things together. What is the process of a bespoke shoe getting put together?
Yeah, so there's 3 main stages in shoemaking. You got the last making, which usually a last maker is also a fitter. In the olden days, when shops were more prevalent around London, you had a fitter who worked in the front of the house, and they would measure the customer and then give the measurements to the last maker who worked in the back. And then obviously work to the measurements maker last. Nowadays, most places, they'll have a combination of those 2 jobs. So they're distinct jobs, really.
For those who may not know, what is a last?
A last is a piece of wood that's been carved into what will become the interior of your shoe. So all the negative space inside the shoe, because you make the shoe around the last, stretch the leather around the last and assemble everything. So when you pull the last out, it leaves it's like a mold, basically. In French, they call it a forme, which is just shape. In English, we call it last, for reasons I'm not too certain of. So yeah, when you get the measurements of the client's feet, you have to interpret those measures into the last. You're not copying the measurements from the feet, because you end up with a last that look like a foot, and no one wants a shoe that looks like a foot. And it probably wouldn't be very comfortable either. So you have to make allowances based on the measurements, and also based on how you want the finished shoe to look. So the toe shape, and there's certain sort of leeway you can have on the fit. But only half the picture is the measurements you take. I mean, the rest of it is in their head. People have got an idea of what they want the shoe to look like, and even if it fits the foot perfectly, technically, if it doesn't look right, you're not going to be happy with it, and you'll start picking flaws. So if you make it that doesn't fit, you might cut a little corner here and there, just to make a certain look and compromise slightly on the fit, but that's what they want. They're happy to put up with a slight compromise here and there. Some people want complete compromise, just they want a thing that looks like the thing they want, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Some people like their shoes very tight, some people like their shoes very loose, and there's no way of knowing, really. So you have to interpret that from when you meet the client, which is the fitting side of it. You have to kind of psychologically profile everyone based on what your conversation you have. So that when I have an appointment with the client, I try and
keep it wanker.
I mean, it depends. It depends. I mean, I try and keep an hour for a first meeting with the client. I usually keep an hour slot so I can sit and have a chat with them. Some doesn't always last that long. Some just like half an hour, 15 minutes. But yeah, try and get to know them a little bit and have a look at what they're wearing, the clothes they wear, the style they have, and the lifestyle they lead. Where they're going to wear the shoes and all that sort of thing. You sort of build up a mental image of the person. So when I'm making a last, I'm thinking about what they were telling me, and as well as the measurements. So you have to sort of marry these 2 disparate sort of things, completely irrefutable facts or the measurements that you take, and then the kind of abstract side of it, which is what you think they're going to actually want when they open the box.
So you're the person who makes the last, which is this wooden form that is both the silhouette and the fit of the shoe.
Yeah.
And then once you've carved the last, what's the next step?
The next stage is making the upper, which is the top side of the shoe. So the bit that covers the top of your foot. And depending on the style they want, if they want Oxford, plain Oxford, brogue Oxford, navy cut shoe, derby shoe, Norwegian split toe, if they're crazy. Loaf or that sort of thing. So you decide the styles and the leather, and based on the style they chose and the last, you have to cut a new pattern. So like just the way the tailor has to make a pattern based on the measurements of your body, every pair of lasts needs a unique pattern based on the shape of the last, so that all the seams and everything lines up nicely. You couldn't take an upper from one shoe and make it on another person's last, because you would end up with like the seams would be crooked, just wouldn't sit right. I mean, you could probably stretch the leather around, and you got a bit of play with leathers when you last up, it stretches. But yeah, so every pair of shoes, every pair of lasts needs unique patterns for every style. So you have to, the upper maker typically does the pattern making as well. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they prefer just to get the patterns made elsewhere. The shop will have an in-house pattern cutter, but some closers prefer to do their own patterns, because then they know what they're going to get, what they need to slot pieces together and make their life a bit easier. And then there's other jobs in shoemaking. So there's the clicker. So once the pattern's been made, there's some places have a full-time clicker whose job is to manage the leather stocks and place the pattern on the skin of leather, avoiding any flaws, making sure the stretch aligns properly, and try and maximize the yield as much as possible, which isn't really possible half the time, because you want to get the best part for each pair of shoes, whereas a factory clicker would just be trying to kind of jigsaw all the pattern pieces as closely as possible, so they can cut everything out and get as many pairs of shoes from a skin. Might get 4 or 5 pairs from one skin. We don't have that luxury in bespoke.
What do you mean taking into account the stretch? What does that mean?
So skin stretches a certain way. So when you have a calf skin, if you look at the skin, you imagine like a calf skin laid flat with the spine in the middle, and then you got the 2 butts either side at the lower end, and you got the bellies on the side and the shoulders at the top. When you pull the leather, if you put your hand on hold down one side and pull the other side, it will stretch quite easily one way, but it won't stretch the other way. It will be almost impossible to stretch. So you want the stretch to sit a certain way on the pattern. So when the vamp of a shoe, the front of a shoe, you want the stretch to run horizontally, sort of from left to right, from toe to toe, rather than from heel to toe, from side to side. You want it to stretch that way. If it stretches the other way, you're going to have a tougher time lasting it on the last, and it won't wear as well. So that's the kind of thing you have to watch out for. And then different parts of the shoe, different styles of shoe, you need the stretch to run certain ways. So that's part. And all around the skin, the stretch goes differently. So when you get further up, the stretch kind of turns a bit. When you got sort of the lower part of the butt, when you get towards where the leg would go, then the stretch kind of shifts more diagonally. So you have to sort of factor all that in. And it's just a case of checking putting the leather down, putting the pattern where you want, checking the stretch, making sure it's okay, and then you cut it out roughly.
What happens if you lay the pattern so that the vamp is, well, how would you describe it? The thing that goes on top of your foot?
Yeah, it goes over your toes.
Over your toes.
Yeah, the vamp is the area of your toes.
That area, if the clicker had made it so that the stretch goes kind of up and down your foot rather than side to side, toe to toe, what happens?
It will crease a bit funny. And you'd only really notice if one shoe was made with a stretch going one way and the other one was going the other way. So you're going to get different creasing, because the flow of the leather is going to be different for each shoe. And also when you get different parts of we only really use the butt, the lower part, the lower back of the calf for upper leather. That's the best part. It's the densest part. When you get up to the shoulder, it's not as tightly the fibers aren't as tightly packed anymore. So you end up with that kind of, when it starts to crease, it ends up with that sort of puffy kind of lumpiness to it, which isn't very appealing. So you just don't use it. I mean, we use that for like trial shoes or something, just, or a lot of it goes to waste, unfortunately. So yeah, a factory.
Can't you use it for the inside or the insole or anything? Or?
No, not really. Because we use special lining leather for the linings.
I see.
So we use a vegetan lining leather. Because that's the part in contact with your foot you want to avoid. Because upper leather is tanned with chrome typically, and it's nicer to have a nice vegetan lining so that it doesn't no chance of it interfering and irritating skin conditions or anything like that.
So after the clicker, there is the
Goes back to the closer again.
Closer.
They take all the pieces from the upper, and then they would, if it needs any notching or gimping on the seam, they would trim that on a notching machine. Punch any broguing. They'd also normally you send it them rough cut, so you cut it oversize, and then they can get it, and gives them a little bit of room, so they will clean cut it from the pattern. And they have to skive all the seams to be skived, so you thin the edges so that they don't end up, because you know, with a bulky seam otherwise, and it wouldn't look good, and it wouldn't feel very good. So all the seams to be skived. They fit the beading. So on the top line, any seam on the top line has to have a beading slipped in place between the upper and the lining to look nice, and also reinforces the that area. In factory shoes, they often use like a tape to reinforce. With the beading, that does that job. So you don't need any reinforcing tape. There's a little bit of reinforcing in the facings where the lacing is. So there's an extra layer of upper leather.
Want to hear the rest? Listen to the full episode and many more other exclusive episodes over on our Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Blamo to sign up and join the Blam fam. You also get access to our exclusive members-only Slack group where we chat about this and a ton of other things. So head over to patreon.com/Blamo, and we'll see you there.